One of the things that I think is important for homeowners to know when it comes to home maintenance and just to know the common facts about your home is to know about concrete. This is Robert with Century 21 Associated Brokers, and one of the things that I have really got a lot of interest in lately, and it relates directly to home building and homes, and it's concrete. Concrete's around us everywhere. Everywhere we look, not here of course, but everywhere we look in building areas. We look at the University of Wyoming, we look at downtown Laramie. There's concrete that's way older than most of our grandparents down there. And if you look at the history of concrete, it goes back to Roman times where they mixed aggregate, sand, and the Egyptians actually burned gypsum to make concrete. They used all kinds of materials, and as the years went by, the ingredients evolved and changed throughout the years. One of the most interesting things that I thought was really kind of vampire-ish is that they would take animal blood and mix it into the concrete because it has plasticity that kind of keeps the concrete wet longer. And the longer your concrete's wet, the slower it cures, the stronger it ends up being. The other thing that's crazy about concrete is it just keeps getting harder and harder and harder throughout its life. One of the great misconceptions I think homeowners have about concrete is that we start to think, man, concrete's waterproof. Water's not gonna go through there. And concrete actually isn't waterproof. It takes in water and it releases water based on what the climate around it has, the moisture level in the climate around it. So concrete, once it's poured, it has pores. Concrete allows moisture in vertically, up and down, and that's how it releases moisture. So when your concrete patio gets wet, it seems like it's just keeping the water off of it, but it's not. It's actually slowly sucking that water down in it, and then as the air above your concrete and it stops raining, starts to dry, it starts to release it, and it only releases it vertically. One of the great uses of concrete in our modern day that I get so excited about, it's so cool, is the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam, you've all seen it, it's that big huge, looks like a big huge reverse shield, and it's the dam, I think it's in Nevada, somewhere there. But Hoover Dam, that had to be poured in one continuous pour. All of that concrete had to be poured together. And they put little cooling bulbs throughout the concrete dam that they were pouring that cooled the concrete because it would get too hot and cure too fast. They had to make it cure slow, and it all had to be one continuous pour, else as soon as there's a crack, water just gushes out. So you couldn't put a cold joint where this part dried and then we're going to come back in and overlap it. Water will find its way through that and break that dam. It had to be one continuous pour. The other thing that's a big bonus to concrete is that it's being built now and mixed to where it will last 100 years. So that's like 100 years of hardly any maintenance. Low maintenance concrete. A lot of people like to build wood decks, and they'll look at concrete and they'll compare it to wood, and concrete's going to be probably more expensive, especially if you don't have the capability to pour it yourself or mix it yourself, or you just don't have that capability. You might have the capability to build a wood deck, so it might be more cost effective for you to build a wood deck, but you have to maintain that wood deck. You have to maintain it in some way unless you buy a non-maintenance decking product, which can be very expensive, and then you'll have to just weigh the costs there. Sometimes people on their deck, if they have a concrete deck or a concrete patio, they want to paint it or they want to seal it. And just know that concrete's just like any other building material that is somewhat raw, like wood. Wood and concrete have to be maintained. They have to continually be maintained with whatever sealer you put on them. If you don't put a sealer on the concrete, it's probably fine, although some people do recommend sealing it with a clear sealer once every 2 years or so. But wood, you're gonna have to seal it, and it's a lot more laborious to seal it. One of the most common uses with home ownership and concrete is when you're building a fence. You might be building a fence and you just throw the bag of concrete in there, in the hole, you level the post, you put water in there, or you might mix it up in a tub and then pour it in. And that's kind of just been the common method to build a fence. But to prove that concrete really is a sponge, when they build post-frame houses, post-frame construction, like pole barns, they actually take a cement, round piece of cement, and they put it down in the ground, in the hole, and they put the posts on top, and then they fill that with just rock. Because concrete will shortly deteriorate wood around it, like on a fence. How does concrete deteriorate wood? It sits there, the wood's stuck in the concrete, and it sits there and it holds moisture. When the ground gets wet, it gets wet, and it stays wet right around that wood. And we know that moisture deteriorates wood. So in the post-frame construction, they use a concrete base, but then they put gravel around it so that that wood can breathe and it doesn't just stay wet all the time. So when it comes to a deck, we talk about maintaining it with maybe a preservative, like an oil stain of some sort. And if you don't keep doing that, then you lose what the fence maybe originally looked like. Now with concrete, if you paint it, or let's say you put glue and carpet over it, unless you continually maintain it at that same level and keep everything sealed, it will start to deteriorate in different spots. It'll find weak spots, and because it'll lock moisture in some places and let the moisture breathe out in other places where it's cracked or not sealed properly. A lot of times we start to think that concrete's waterproof. And one of the worst examples for us to take and think that concrete is waterproof is in our exterior basement walls of our house. We've got to get the water out away from that concrete to keep it strong and to keep it the way it's supposed to be. You don't want water up against that all the time. You don't want your concrete defending water from your house. It's not really its job. I also have another video that I did earlier that talked about diverting the water away from your home's foundation, and that kind of goes along with this concrete talk here. We want to keep that water away from the concrete. Concrete's not meant to get beat down with water over and over and over again. It's meant to be structural for your home's foundation, and I'll link that here.